The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, as if the whole world is holding its breath. The boy sat alone in his small bedroom, staring at the glow of his desk lamp. Homework lay scattered on the table, but he wasn't really working. His mind wandered, drifting between thoughts, tired yet restless. Outside, the wind whispered softly through the trees, brushing against the window like an old friend. Then he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. It was faint, almost hidden under the sigh of the night. A little click, a soft scrape of metal. His head lifted slowly. He told himself it was nothing, maybe the old frame of the window shifting or the wood creaking. But then, there was another sound, the unmistakable slide of glass moving against glass. The window was opening. He froze, in his chair. Every muscle in his body tightened, his heart beginning to pound against his ribs. Fear came first, hot and sharp. He thought of burglars, of shadows with knives, of every dark story he had ever heard. His breath caught in his throat. And then, she climbed inside. She moved awkwardly, slipping over the sill, her body trembling as if every movement hurt. She landed lightly on her feet, but he saw the way she winced. She wasn't human, not completely. Her skin shimmered faintly, not with sweat or moonlight, but with a glow that looked alive, like liquid silver flowing under her skin. Her eyes were wide and deep, reflecting the dim light of his room in unnatural colors, blue, violet, and hints of gold. He wanted to scream. He wanted to shout for help, but the sound died in his throat, because she didn't look like a monster. She looked afraid. Her clothes were torn and burned, half armor, half fabric, clinging to her like it had survived a fire. Her arms had cuts across them, glowing faintly, not bleeding red, but something else, something that seemed to hum softly in the silence. She staggered forward, breathing heavy, her chest rising and falling with quick, sharp gasps, and then she looked at him. Her voice was quiet, shaking with exhaustion, but the words were clear. Words he would never forget. "Make room for me." That was all she said. Not help, not hide me, not don't be afraid. Just those 4 words, heavy and desperate, as if her entire world had collapsed and the only safe place left was here, in his room. The boy didn't move. His mind raced. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. He should run, he should call someone. He should do anything but sit there frozen, staring at the strange girl who had just broken into his room through his own window. But then he saw her hands. They shook as she held something close to her chest. A small device, cracked and broken, sparking faintly. She clutched it the way a child clutches a toy, or the way a soldier clutches their last weapon. Her fingers trembled so badly it looked like she might drop it, yet she refused to let go. She lowered herself slowly to the floor, her back against the wall, curling up as if trying to make herself smaller, trying to disappear. The boy felt his fear shift. It didn't vanish, but it changed. Because now, looking at her, he didn't just see something strange and dangerous. He saw someone who was running, someone who was lost, someone who was hurt. Her eyes met his again. In them he saw a storm of things he couldn't name. Pain, terror, exhaustion, but also hope. A small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't push her away. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. He didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do. But he nodded just a little. That was enough. Her shoulders loosened slightly, like the weight of the universe had lifted from her back. She closed her eyes, breathing out a shaky sigh, and whispered again, softer this time. "Just for tonight. Make room for me." And in that moment, the boy understood something without words. She wasn't here to hurt him. She wasn't here to take. She was here because she had nowhere else. The night had changed forever. The room was small, but now it felt smaller. The boy sat frozen on the edge of his bed, watching her curl against the wall like a wounded bird. The lamp on his desk painted both of them in soft light, leaving the corners in shadow. The silence pressed between them, heavy and uncertain. She didn't move at first. Her breaths came fast, shallow, like she was afraid even of air itself. Her silver skin flickered faintly with each inhale, as if her body carried its own fragile light. He couldn't stop staring. Every part of her was strange, yet none of her strangeness felt evil. Finally, he whispered, Who are you?" Her eyes opened, but she didn't answer right away. She only hugged the cracked device closer, to her chest, her fingers gripping it so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. Her gaze darted to the window, then to the shadows on the ceiling as if she expected something or someone to burst through at any second. "I cannot say," she replied at last, her voice low and tired. The words trembled, as if every syllable cost her strength. "Not yet, please. Only let me rest just for now." The boy hesitated. He didn't know her. He didn't know if she was telling the truth, or if danger followed her into his very home. But her voice was not sharp. It was not cruel. It was a voice cracked by fear, by exhaustion, by too much running. "You're hurt," he said softly, noticing again the glowing lines across her arms. They weren't bleeding like human wounds, but the faint pulse inside them made his chest tighten. Her lips curved in something like a bitter smile. "Hurt is a small word, but it is not new to me." She shifted, wincing, as if every movement carried pain. The boy wanted to stand, wanted to step closer, but his legs refused to obey. He was afraid of her, afraid of what she represented, afraid of the unknown. Yet at the same time, he felt something else building beneath the fear. Curiosity, pity, a strange pull, as if a string tied her heart to his without permission. The minutes passed slowly, the air filled only with the sound of their breaths. He tried again. "Why here? Why my window?" Her eyes softened, just a little. "Because it was open." It was such a simple answer that it nearly made him laugh, if laughter weren't trapped in his throat. He had left the latch loose, careless after weeks of summer heat. A small detail, meaningless to him, until tonight. That mistake had made space for her. "Was someone chasing you?" he asked, his voice low, almost afraid to know. Her eyes darkened, shadows moving across their strange colors. She didn't speak, but the silence was an answer. She looked at the window again, the fear in her expression clearer now. The boy followed her gaze. Outside, the street was quiet. The wind swayed the branches. The world seemed unchanged. Yet he felt it too, the edge, the weight of danger close by, as if the night itself was listening. He swallowed hard. "You can stay here tonight," he said at last, surprising himself with the words. They slipped out before he could stop. Them. "Just tonight." Her eyes widened, shimmering like glass catching light. For a moment, her entire body seemed to soften, as if his words had reached deeper than she expected. "You mean it?" He nodded quickly, afraid that if he hesitated, the courage would leave him. She exhaled, long and shaky, her shoulders dropping as if a mountain had been lifted from her back. She closed her eyes again and leaned her head against the wall. For the first time since entering, she seemed less like prey running from predators and more like someone simply trying to breathe. The boy leaned back too, his body still buzzing with fear and confusion. His room felt different now, not just a place for sleep and study, but a fragile sanctuary holding a secret that didn't belong to Earth. He didn't understand her, didn't know her story, but he couldn't push her out into the night. Not after hearing her voice, not after seeing her eyes. His heart still pounded, but softer now. He lay down slowly, pulling the blanket over himself, though sleep seemed impossible. Across the room, the girl with silver skin clutched her broken device and whispered something under her breath. It wasn't in his language, but even without understanding the words, he felt the weight of them. They were a prayer, a hope, maybe a thank you. The night stretched on, two strangers sharing the same air, bound by nothing but accident, and something neither of them yet understood. And in the boy's chest, fear began to shift into something else. Something new. Something that felt like the beginning of a story far bigger than his small room. The boy did not sleep much that night. Every time his eyes closed, his ears opened wider, waiting for sounds outside. The rumble of engines, the crunch of footsteps, the crash of glass, but the night stayed still, too still. Only the soft rhythm of her breathing filled the room. When dawn began to rise, painting the curtains with pale light, he sat up. She was still there, curled near the wall, holding the broken device against her chest like a lifeline. Her silver skin had dimmed, the glow weaker now, like a candle almost out. She opened her eyes slowly and looked at him. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, he asked gently, "Are you okay?" Her lips parted, but no easy answer came. She lifted the device in her hands, showing it to him. It was cracked along one side, small sparks flashing now and then, humming faintly. This was my map, my voice, my call for home. Her voice shook. Now it is only silence. The boy frowned, trying to understand. "It's broken?" "Yes," she whispered. "And so am I." Her words hit him harder than he expected. She wasn't just speaking about the device, she was speaking about herself, her body, her heart, maybe even her soul. He leaned forward, curious despite the fear still crawling inside him. "What happened to you?" Her eyes closed, and for a moment he thought she would refuse to answer. But then she spoke, each word heavy. "My ship was burned. My people, scattered into the stars. We were hunted, pulled from the sky like birds shot from the air. I ran. I kept running until only this world was left. Until your window." Her voice cracked on the last word. She turned her face away, pressing her forehead against her knees. He could see her trembling, not from cold but from memory. The boy's chest ached. He didn't know her world, her people, her war, but he knew the feeling of being cornered, of wanting just one safe place. He thought of the way she had whispered, "Make room for me." Now he understood those words carried the weight of everything she had lost. He wanted to ask more, but the look in her eyes stopped him. Some wounds were too raw to touch. So instead, he said softly, "You're safe here." She lifted her head slowly, studying him with those strange, glowing eyes. "Why do you say that? You don't know me. You don't know what danger follows me." He swallowed but didn't look away. "Because you needed a place. And I had room." Her lips trembled, and for the first time her expression softened. She was still scared, still broken, but now there was something else shining faintly behind her eyes. A fragile thread of trust. The boy stood and walked to his desk. He pulled out a bottle of water and placed it near her. She hesitated, staring at it as if unsure what to do. Then she reached out with careful fingers and lifted it to her lips. She drank slowly, her body relaxing just a little with each swallow. When she lowered the bottle, she whispered, "Thank you." The words were simple, but the way she said them made his chest tighten. It was not just thanks for water. It was thanks for not turning her away, for not shutting the window, for giving her one more night alive. He sat back on the bed, watching her. She still clutched the broken device, her thumb brushing across its cracked surface as if hoping it might still respond. "Can it be fixed?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not here. Not with what I have. Without it, I am lost." Her eyes dimmed. "And without my people, I am nothing." The boy wanted to argue, to tell her she was not nothing. But he stayed quiet. She was a stranger, someone from a world far beyond his own. Yet in her pain, he saw something painfully human. The morning light grew brighter, filling the room. The boy knew one thing for certain now. This was no dream. The girl in his room was real. Her fear was real. And the danger she carried was real, too. He looked at her again, sitting small and broken against his wall. She had crossed the stars, lost her people, and yet here she was, asking only for space in a boy's room. And in that moment, He understood. Sometimes, the heaviest weight someone carries is not the wound on their body, but the silence of being alone. The boy thought morning would bring safety, but daylight did not chase away the fear. If anything, it made it sharper. Shadows could hide in the night, but in the morning danger stood clear, bold, and close. By noon she had moved little from the corner of the room. She sat with her back against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, clutching the broken device as if it were the last piece of her world. The boy tried to act normal, tried to sit at his desk and pretend to study, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. Sometimes she closed her eyes and he could see the flicker of pain across her face, as if memories still chased her even here. Sometimes she stared at the window, tense and waiting. Then, in the late afternoon, it came. At first, it was only a sound, a low, steady hum, too deep to be a car, too sharp to be a plane. The boy froze, his pen slipping from his fingers. She heard it too. Her head snapped toward the window, her silver skin shivering faintly like ripples on water. "No," she whispered. Her voice carried a fear he had not yet heard before. The hum grew louder. It was not just one machine. There were several, moving slowly, circling. The boy felt his chest tighten. His small neighborhood street, always so ordinary, now felt like the stage for something far larger than he could ever imagine. "They found me," she said, her voice breaking. "They always find me." The boy rushed to the window and yanked the curtains shut. Bright beams of light swept across the street outside, white and searching. Not headlights. These lights moved too smoothly, scanning side to side like the eyes of hunters. He pressed his back against the wall, his breath coming fast. "What do we do?" he asked quickly. She shook her head, her eyes wide. "Hide. Pray. They cannot know I am here." He could hear the engines now, deeper, closer, like predators circling their prey. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might give him away. He looked at her again, and in that moment something inside him shifted. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She wasn't just a girl from another world. She was someone terrified, someone running, someone who had trusted his room to be the last safe place, and he realized he wanted to protect her. "Stay down," he whispered firmly. He pulled the blanket from his bed and tossed it toward her. She hesitated, then wrapped it around her body, hiding the glow of her silver skin. The lights outside moved closer, brushing across the walls of nearby houses. He held his breath as one beam lingered near his window. For a long second, the room filled with bright white light, almost blinding. His hand pressed flat against the curtain, holding it shut, as if his thin arms could keep the hunters out. Then, slowly, the light shifted away. The engines moved further down the street. The hum grew faint again, fading into the distance. But silence did not return. Instead, the boy felt the heavy weight of what had just passed. She looked at him, her eyes wide and shining with something new. Not just fear, something closer to disbelief. "You stood in front of me," she said softly, almost in awe. He swallowed. His throat was dry, but the words came anyway. "You came through my window. That makes you my guest." Her lips parted, and for the first time he saw something, close to a smile, a trembling, fragile smile that seemed to carry more gratitude than words could hold. The boy sat back down on the bed, his hands shaking, his chest aching with adrenaline. He had never felt so small, so powerless, and yet, in that moment, he also felt stronger than ever before. The machines were gone for now, but he knew they would return. They were searching, and they would not stop until they found her. Across the room she pulled the blanket tighter, her body trembling less now. She whispered something in her own language, soft and quick, then looked back at him. "You are human," she said, "but you do not hide behind fear. That is rare." He didn't know what to say, so he only shrugged, but inside her words lit something warm in his chest. The night had been the beginning. Now the chase was real, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he knew this was no longer just her fight. It was his too. The boy's room felt heavier after the searchlights passed. Silence returned, but it was no longer peaceful. It was the silence of two hearts beating too fast, of danger that had only stepped aside for a moment but not gone away. The girl sat wrapped in his blanket, her glowing skin hidden, her strange device still clutched in her hands. Her breathing had slowed, but her eyes remained wide, watching, the window like a cornered animal. The boy spoke first. His voice was quiet but steady. "They were looking for you." She nodded, her jaw tight. "Yes." "Why?" Her fingers traced the cracked edge of the device. For a long time, she didn't answer. The boy thought she wouldn't, that she would keep her secrets locked away. But finally, she lifted her gaze to him. "Because I carry something they fear." The boy leaned forward, his curiosity stronger than his fear now. "What is it?" Her hand pressed against her chest, over her heart. Not a weapon, not a treasure, a memory, a truth they want erased. She looked down at the broken device. "This was my way to keep it alive. Without it, they believe the truth will die with me." The boy frowned, struggling to understand. "What truth?" Her voice grew soft, almost breaking. "That my people existed, that we lived, that we were not just a shadow to be hunted until nothing remains." The boy felt something sharp twist inside him. She wasn't just running from enemies, she was running from erasure, from being forgotten. "You mean, they want to wipe you out?" he asked carefully. "Yes," she whispered. Her eyes glistened. "And they nearly have. I don't know how. Many of us are left. Maybe none." Her hands shook as she held the device tighter. "I am not a soldier anymore. I am only a witness. That is why they chase me, because even one voice is too much." Her words struck him like stones. He had never thought about what it would mean to lose everything, not just family or friends, but an entire people, an entire world. The loneliness in her eyes was too deep for him to imagine. He sat in silence for a moment, then said softly, "But you're still here." Her lips trembled. "For now." She looked down, hiding her face, but the boy could hear the weight in her breath, the way it shook as if holding back a storm. He wanted to reach out, to touch her shoulder, to tell her she wasn't alone, but his hand stayed still on his knees. Instead, he spoke. "Then you're not nothing. If you're the last, then you're everything." Her head lifted, her eyes wide with surprise. No one had ever said that to her before. He could see it in her face. For the first time, her fear loosened its grip, replaced by something softer. "Why do you say this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Why do you risk yourself? You owe me nothing." He swallowed hard. "Because you came through my window, and when you asked me to make room for you, I couldn't say no. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but I won't let them take you. Not while you're here." Tears filled her strange, glowing eyes. She quickly blinked them away, but he had seen. She wasn't made of steel. She wasn't untouchable. She was fragile in the deepest way. And still, she kept fighting to survive. The room fell quiet again, but this silence was different. Not fear, not tension, something more fragile, something closer to trust. She leaned her head back against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment. "In my language," she whispered, "there is a word for this. It means when a stranger shields you as if you were their own blood. I never thought I would hear it here." The boy smiled faintly, though his heart was still racing. "Maybe we don't have the same word, but we have the same meaning." Outside, the street looked calm again, but they both knew the hunters would return. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. But inside that small room, something had shifted. The girl was no longer just a fugitive hiding in his house. She was a voice that refused to be silenced. And the boy was no longer just an ordinary child with homework and quiet nights. He was part of her story now. For the first time, they were not strangers in the dark. They were two lives tied together, carrying a truth bigger than either of them had expected. and neither of them would forget this moment. The evening came slowly, heavy with silence. The boy sat on the edge of his bed while she stayed near the wall, wrapped in his blanket. The room smelled faintly of dust and paper, ordinary things, but now it felt like the center of two worlds colliding. Neither spoke for a while. The boy pretended to flip through his books, but his mind was far away. His heart still carried the sound of the engines outside, the searchlights cutting the night. Every time he thought about it, fear crawled back into his chest. But then he would look at her, and the fear softened into something else, something harder to name. She was staring, at his desk, at the lamp, the pens, the little objects scattered across the wood. She touched the corner of a notebook as if it was something fragile, something rare. "You write here?" she asked softly. "Yes," the boy replied. "Homework. Notes. Sometimes. Thoughts." She tilted her head. "Thoughts on paper. Strange. My people used to carry memory in the stars themselves, but now—" She trailed off, her fingers tightening on the broken device. The boy felt the weight in her voice. He tried to offer something lighter. "You can write here too if you want." Her eyes widened slightly. "Me?" He nodded. "Why not? You said your people are almost gone. Maybe you should leave your words somewhere safe, even if it's just my notebook." For a long moment she stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she reached out and took the pen. Her fingers were delicate, careful, as if holding something dangerous. She bent over the paper and began to draw shapes. Not letters. Not words he knew, but flowing symbols that glowed faintly under the ink. When she finished, she set the pen down and looked at him. "This is my name. In my tongue. So if I vanish, someone still remembers I lived." The boy's throat tightened. He touched the page gently, tracing the glowing lines. "I'll remember," he whispered. Her eyes softened, shimmering with unspoken gratitude. The hours passed. The boy brought her some bread and fruit from the kitchen. She ate slowly, almost reverently, as though each bite was more than food. It was proof that she was still alive, still welcomed. Later she asked him questions about Earth, about humans, about the sky that never seemed to end. He answered as best he could, sometimes embarrassed by how small his answers felt. "Your people fight?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Wars. Arguments. We fight each other more than anything else." She looked at him with quiet sadness. "You do not know how lucky you are, to fight and still survive, to fight and still exist." Her words hung heavy in the air. The boy lowered his eyes, ashamed. He had never thought of humanity as lucky, but now sitting with someone who had lost nearly everything, he understood. The night deepened. Shadows thickened against the walls. Outside, the world seemed calm, but they both knew it was only pretending. The hunters would come again. The girl pulled the blanket tighter, her body curled smaller. "You should sleep," the boy said softly. "I'll stay awake a while." She shook her head. "I cannot sleep. Not anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see the fire. The ships falling. The voices cut off." Her voice broke and she turned away quickly. The boy hesitated, then slid down from the bed to sit on the floor a short distance from her. He didn't touch her, didn't speak, but his presence filled the silence. Slowly she breathed easier. Slowly, her head tilted, her eyes closing at last, exhaustion pulling her into a restless sleep. He sat beside her, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. She was still trembling, even in dreams. The boy wanted to protect her from everything. From the hunters outside, from the nightmares inside. But he was only human, and his room was so small against the universe. "Still," he whispered quietly, almost to himself, "you're safe here. As long as you're here, I'll make room for you." She didn't hear, but maybe she felt it. Because for the first time, her face softened in sleep, the fear lifting just a little, and the boy knew. Two different worlds had crossed in the quiet of his room, and somehow, in that crossing, they had both found something they needed. The boy didn't remember when his eyes finally closed. He must have drifted into sleep sometime before dawn, sitting on the floor near her. When he woke, the first light of morning was slipping through the curtains, soft and golden. She was already awake. She sat by the window now, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders, watching the pale horizon. Her silver skin caught the sunlight, glowing softly, no longer trembling. But her eyes carried the same sadness, the same weight. "You should rest more," the boy whispered, rubbing his tired eyes. She glanced at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I rested enough. More than I thought I ever would again." He sat up straighter, heart tightening. He knew what she meant. "She wasn't staying. You're leaving," he said quietly. Her smile faded. She looked back at the sky. "I have to. If I stay, they will find me. And if they find me here, they will find you too. This world must stay hidden. Your people must stay safe." The boy's throat tightened. He wanted to argue, to tell her she could hide here forever. But deep inside, he knew she was right. He couldn't protect her forever. His room was too small, his world too fragile. "Still," he asked, "will I see you again?" She turned to him slowly, her eyes shining in the morning light. "I do not know. My path is broken. But if the stars are kind, yes. One day." She reached for the notebook on his desk. With careful fingers, she tore out the page where she had written her name. She pressed it into his hands. "Keep this," she whispered, "so you will never doubt I was real." The boy held the paper, as if it were made of glass. The glowing symbol still shimmered faintly, alive with her touch. He felt tears burn his eyes, but he forced them back. He didn't want her to see him cry. She stepped closer then, standing only a breath away. For a moment neither spoke. Then she placed her hand gently over his, warm and trembling. "You are human," she said softly. "But last night, you were more. You risked yourself for me, when you had no reason. That is something even my people forgot how to do." Her voice shook, but she smiled through it. "One night with you gave me more hope than 1,000 battles." The boy swallowed hard. "And you showed me how small fear can be if someone trusts you." They stayed like that, hand to hand, for one long heartbeat. Then, slowly, she pulled away. She climbed onto the windowsill, her silver skin catching the morning light. The broken device still hung at her side, but her posture was stronger now. Not whole, not healed, but ready to keep going. She looked back at him one last time. Her eyes glistened, her lips curved in a trembling smile. "Remember me," she whispered. "And if the day comes when I return, make room again." And then she was gone, slipping into the dawn, vanishing into the world beyond his window. The boy stood frozen, staring at the empty space she had left behind. The air still carried the faint warmth of her presence. He pressed the page to his chest, the glowing symbols burning softly against his skin. For a long time he stayed there, silent. The world outside woke slowly. Birds calling, cars starting, neighbors moving about, all unaware of the miracle that had touched his small room. He looked at the sky where the sun rose higher, golden and bright. Somewhere out there she was running again. Somewhere out there she was still fighting to be remembered, and he knew, no matter what happened, no matter how much time passed, he would keep his promise. He would remember. He would always make room. Because sometimes, humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or its science or its armies. Sometimes it was as simple as opening a window and saying, "You are not alone."